And celebrating those small wins are very important because when you're on the battlefield, it's a blur and you don't really appreciate how far you've come in the grand scheme. I tend to find founders, um, we tend to overestimate what we can do in the short term, but underestimate what we can do in the long term. And every time there's a setback, it's the psychology of loss. A loss hurts a lot more than a win. We dwell on our losses and we take them personally. Because, and how can you not? It would be nonsense to say to, any of the listeners, right, who are founders or want to be founders, don't take it personally. This is your life. You are foregoing safety, stability, sanity, sleep to do this. And so, of course, it's going to hurt. If it doesn't hurt and it doesn't hurt you emotionally, you're a psychopath, And yeah, you have to be a psychopath to probably do well in a startup. But it's going to hurt. And that's okay. So try to dwell on the good things.
And I think I want to hit on that point as well, because I think it's really important, especially in a world of where everyone's working remotely, right? But that's also the nature of our business. We are kind of a remote first team because we're out in the field so much, right? Sure, we have an office. It's, 4 desks in a co-working space, but the vast majority of our team in any given day is out in the field, building, selling, helping, doing whatever is needed, right? And so when you have that kind of remote first nature, you have to be able to find those common bonds, and celebrating those successes has been very important for us along the way, right? Still to this day, every time a new subscriber signs up for our internet, 3 bells pop up on the subscriptions channel on Slack, right? Announcing to everyone that we have a new customer. Right. The same thing goes every time we're closing a building. We're doing something similar as well from a sales perspective. So I think, being able to make every employee attached to those small wins as they're happening in real time kind of is very empowering, I think. And, it's fun as well.
Yeah. And, sort of the analogy that, a financial analogy for people here is that, markets tend to climb very slowly but fall very rapidly. It does feel like that when you're in a startup, that it's not necessarily one step backwards, 2 step forward. Sometimes you're climbing in a building and there is no elevator, but often you'll fall an entire floor, and it's bruising when that happens.
And just as a pitch is a play on emotion, right? Where you're trying to build the person you're pitching on, their emotions, so that they build this attachment to what you're doing. As a founder, even as a startup employee, you have a grand emotional attachment to what you're building. And local minimums can make every local maximum just disappear. Right? Because you're so focused on trying to roll this ball forward, every time it rolls backwards, it can be kind of very demoralizing. So I think, something me personally, I've always struggled with is, always maintaining that, that viewpoint on what we've done and been successful with, but also what else is in the hopper that I know we're going to be successful with as well. Looking towards that future. It's something that's difficult when you're in as in my role, I'm very focused on the day-to-day operations and execution of our business, while trying to maintain those kind of corporate goals that we've set, and knowing that we're inching our way, or even racing our way towards those goals. It kind of what kind of gets me excited in the morning, and why
that's right.
Why I love answering email at 6:30 in the morning.
Otherwise, you will dwell on the negativity, and you might encounter people that are like that, and you can't really afford to keep them in your startup, even if they're great performers, because they will ruin the morale. You need to look at what's coming next and how things will be better. James, define for us local minimum and maximum for the people that are trying to understand that concept and how.
And lows, right? So signing a new customer is a high. Losing a customer is a low. Signing a new building, high. Losing on a sales opportunity is a low. An outage is always a low. That those are the ones that hit me the worst, right? Now we have very few outages, which is nice. We're very fortunate there. But when they happen once a month, boy, are they demoralizing, because these are people. When you deal in a good internet, it's essential, right? People need that 99.99% uptime. So feeling like you've let a customer down is always a local minimum for me.
If you break it down and you break down a startup's growth into a series of local minimums and maximums, at what point do you analyze what's happening and decide to fix something that keeps on happening, like local minimums? Have you got to a point where you feel like, okay, this has been happening too much? We now need to dedicate resources to preventing some of the local minimums. And, that's difficult to do. And the local maximums can just keep going up and up and up and up. And just before you answer that, I encountered a situation in the startup Fungal that I ran. So Fungal was the startup, and we grew like a rocket ship. 850K year one, 15 million year two, 56 million year three, and then we had a plateau. It wasn't a plateau, but it felt like a damn plateau. We went from 56 to 64. Something around that, right? And then we went to like 150 and then 300. That year was when I realized we had a lot of local minimums, if you want to use that, right? And our local maximums were so big that it kind of hid the local minimums. But those local minimums can sometimes turn into a disease. They can grow and grow and grow, and they hold you back. They're dead weight on the rocket ship, if you want to put it that way, right? And you need to toss that, you need to fix that. So I spent an entire year retooling, replacing many people on the team, changing a lot of our marketing, re-engineering our actual software and platform. There comes a point where you've got to realize and track, why am I losing deals? Why are we not growing fast? And the best time to do that sometimes is when you're growing fast, and it's easy to overlook. Because once growth slows, you're suddenly going to be going down.
Well, I think it's very, especially when you start, the lifetime of a startup is so, sure, it's this 10-year journey, but, we've been around now 3 years. Every month of it is a 36th of our lifetime, right? It's actually quite a significant portion of what we're doing. And so if you don't spend that time to continue iterating on all processes, it's not really worth it, right? So, something that we do is we have a series of kind of cross-functional committees, and they're focused on different aspects of the business. We have one that's focused on network maintenance, right? So just, we meet every 2 weeks and go through everything that's happened in the past two weeks. We try to understand if there are recurring processes, recurring issues, share tips and tricks. But then it also kind of lends itself, we are constantly iterating on what we call our standards. And this is, our standard of what we are building and putting out in the field. It could have been easy to just come up with a standard and lock it in 12 months ago, but then you lose 12 months of innovation and 12 months of advantage that you have on whoever else is in the market, right? Whether they're Verizon or someone who's smaller like us. So I think, continuing to process on those standards is important, not just in our engineering team, but in, kind of in my world, it's more customer success and marketing, and everything we're doing as it relates to our customers once they've decided to sign up for our internet. So I think, always being able to take that omniscient view on your work and your processes is important. It's difficult, and being able to actually measure is also quite difficult, especially when things are qualitative to a certain degree. Sure, you can see the quantitative metrics like, this one building, we're losing some churn, or we're seeing higher churn, like what's happening there. Sure, you can narrow in there, but very frequently it's going to be much more anecdotal and qualitative. So, but I think that kind of cross-functional committee process for us works quite well, because you get a viewpoint that isn't just like the viewpoint that's been in my head every day for the last month, right? Or last 2 weeks.
And it's situations like this where the real company building is happening. Just as we talked about in an earlier episode, when you're putting a deck together for an investor, you also have the chance to rethink your business and how you might describe it. And that can translate in the future to being better at pitching and building a deck that customers might also, appreciate, or outsiders might appreciate. Same here. When you're building standards and you're building processes, these processes will stick. They'll become your culture. And when you're 100 times bigger, you'll be surprised. Like, wow, we still do this. Of course you do this. You're the founder and you've made that the DNA, and you're training everyone else how to follow. So when a founder or a team is in a situation where they're having to implement processes, and it feels very different, right, than what you've been doing, embrace that. This is a chance to professionalize and double down on the way you do things. Don't go copy the processes Verizon has, right? Do them in your own way, even if it sounds kind of funky. Every company has like really quirky cultural things they do, but those things make that company unique. And a stronger identity as well.
Well, it's something to the earlier point about kind of continuing to build that pitch deck and always be iterating on that. When we start a new raise, we start from scratch. Sure, in between raises, I'm kind of thinking about our existing pitch, updating it along the way, because you're always pitching. Let's get real. When someone asks for materials, you want to have something to send them that isn't just like cobbled together. But I think that process of actually starting from scratch on a pitch is important, because businesses evolve, right? If you're going through these micro pivots over the course of a business, 12 months of micro pivots are going to add up to a very different story probably. And that's going to need to be reflected. And there's a reason you've come to that new story. So shouldn't you be excited about telling that new story as well? So I think that process, is kind of, it's true in every aspect of the business that we operate.
Yeah, there is, the only way to learn all this is to actually do it.
That's, coming from venture, kind of why, look, my favorite, I went straight from school to working in venture. I did not have any credence to be telling a founder what to do, right? Now, people took advice from me, so, I hope that worked out well for them. And for some, I think it has. But, what ground did I have to stand on? And, but at the same time, working in venture, my favorite part was working alongside companies. Of course, when you work with a company as a VC, you always exist at this 10,000 foot view. You're never actually really in the weeds doing much. So I think, now being on this side of the table, what I love is the doing, right? It's every day, our ability to push that rock uphill is somewhat dependent upon my ability to show up and perform on a daily basis as well. Now that puts everyone kind of in this high pressure situation, but I guess that's what gets me excited as well, and why being a founder works well for me. Now, it also definitely leads to those sleepless nights, and maybe one day I won't have as many of those. But I just feel bad for my partner; she's stuck with me for now. But it is what it is.
Just to round up, any thoughts on maintaining a work-life balance and your sanity and trying to improve your overall quality of being and getting some sleep?
My favorite, one of my favorite activities outside of work is cooking. So what I like about it is, sure, it's a process and you're going through it, and I like tinkering, and I've spent a lot of time in a kitchen growing up and now. What I love most about it is that I don't have my phone on me. It is, what I describe as my therapy, where I can zone in, and I cook, what tend to be complex things, and they take some time as well. So spending that 45 minutes to 2 hours in a kitchen just focused is fantastic for me. It's that opportunity to decompress. I'd love to say that I read 52 books a year, but I'll also just admit that I finished my first book in a year just this past weekend. So but a lot of ways to decompress. But I think for me, cooking's one. I play a lot of tennis as well. Right? Yeah, exactly. Find your thing that is wholly different than your work.
Yeah. Totally different. Some people have physical activities that they do, and there is one thing entrepreneurs tend to have in common, and that's obsession. And I've suffered from this. I'd work hard and play hard, and that's dangerous. Sometimes you'll break away from your work is equally tiring. I used to do mixed martial arts. I'd go to the jiu-jitsu class in the morning and get my butt kicked. Then I'd limp to the office, with bruises, and I'm now in the battlefield trying to, build a company. Very contrasting to today's life, and hopefully it's inspiration. Well, I think, I actually miss being an entrepreneur. I'm itching to get back and start a company, but life is good. You don't have to work as hard because you're on the VC side, right? And I'll tell you that it's absolutely true. You work hard, but it does not compare. Yes, you work hard relatively to other people because that's how you are. VC can be demanding, but it is in a different dimension, man, compared to running a company. Oh my God. And the activities, and I think maybe it's just as I age, right? I like to do things that are less stressful on the body. Reading's very good. It could be gardening, it could be cooking, it could be going for a walk. These things are very important, and physical activity is important too, but you've got to realize physical activity, if you're pushing too hard, it's a source of burnout. It taxes your adrenal system, and it's a source of stress. So you do want some play hard, but you also want to make sure you recover. Maybe it's yoga, and please not heated yoga with loud music on where you're sweating buckets, right?
Yeah, as a lifelong tennis player, I enjoy leisure sports. So that's my speed right there.
Awesome. Well, look, this has been fun having you on the show. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.